Welcome to episode 181 of Trek Live. How you doing this morning, Bill?
Doing well.
Doing well?
Doing well. Look forward to talking about Star Trek Voyager. How are you?
I am good. I'm really excited This is one of our favorite topics, and my favorite topics to kind of dive into. But yeah, I'm excited to talk about some Voyager this morning. Before we jump into that, Bill, how's your rewatch going?
It's going. I watched yesterday
Mm,
Year of Hell parts 1 and 2, and you were cordially invited from Deep Space Nine.
nice. What a
So,
day.
yeah, it was good. It was pretty, two pretty opposite ends of the spectrum there with Year of Hell and you were cordially invited. Uh, I think Year of Hell is, we've talked about it, I think, here and there over the course of different topics, but uh, I love it. I think um, it's my favorite Kate Mulgrew turn as Janeway. Um, there are these little moments, um, especially with Tuvok, with Tim Russ, I think, that are like extremely good uh, emotional beats that really resonate with me. So I just there's a whole episode way back in our archive that we did a couple of years ago about the reset button, and I think we talked about Year of Hell a lot there, and kind of I at least I remember defending sort of the use of it and why I don't think it you know wipes away anything of value from Year of Hell. Um, so I would encourage anybody who's looking for Year of Hell kind of content to go check that episode out in our backlog. But it's up there for me for Voyager. It's in the conversation for favorite episode of Voyager. I kind of go back and forth between that and Scorpion and Timeless.
Yeah.
Um, but
Both those
yeah,
episodes, or I guess it would be three episodes technically, but both those
mm,
episodes really good in my book. Top tier Trek, I think, and it's
yeah,
kind of cool that they happen so close to each other, which is cool. So yeah, for me, I've been bad. I've only watched one episode this week. Been a busy week. Got some personal stuff
mm-hmm.
happened this week, but I watched Chrysalis.
Yeah,
That's episode 5 of the season 7 of Deep Space Nine. Um,
mm-hmm.
it borderlines on lifetimey cheesiness a little bit at times, but there's also some I think really good character moments for Bashir, and me realizing he's actually pretty lonely. It feels like. Um, there's a lot happens really quick, I think, in that episode, but yeah, I think it's there's some good character moments when you think about what the Bashir character's gone through. O'Brien's got 2 kids now, so he can't come out every week like he used to. The loss of Jadzia Dax, that's tough on him, and just being the way that he's kind of lonely at the top with as far as intelligence goes with his, I guess now, um, outed secret that he's genetically enhanced. So yeah, there's some interesting things there, but I think at the end of the day it goes a little bit too cheeseball, which in my book sometimes can be a good thing, but
yeah.
this
Usually,
one is not one of those cases. So yeah.
yeah. When I think of that episode, the first thing that comes to mind is always the little scene in the cargo bay where they're singing for some reason. That always like pops into my mind is like, oh, that's that episode. And that's a nice moment. Kind of stands out as something different that you don't see in Star Trek very often.
No,
That
you don't.
kind of
You do
um, yeah.
not.
Yeah, I've always had mixed feelings about it. I echo everything you said. I think it maybe veers a little too into um, lifetime cheeseball kind of romance. But yeah, Siddig's good in it. I think he gives a good performance. I think it explores some corners of his character that don't get a lot of attention, and you can make a case that maybe it's a little out of character at times. If you don't buy that he has those corners of his personality and his experience. But yeah, it's interesting episode. You got some good stuff coming up though. I think you're kind of through the some more
slow
middle of
start.
the road stuff.
Yeah.
Beginning of 7.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. For sure.
Yep. So real quick, we have Cyber Honey and Jimmy77 in the chat, both saying good morning.
Welcome, guys.
Cyber Honey watched some Voyager this week in anticipation of talking about our topic today.
Nice.
And gotta love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So today we're going to be... We did this once before, twice before, but once very similar to this. We did an Enterprise Season 5 kind of workshop. Like, how would we do that? What kind of... If we were given the reins for an imaginary Season 5 of Enterprise, we worked through the process of what we'd want to see, how we'd want to do it. Built some... I think we established some rules for what we were going to try to do, and...
Yeah.
You know, what was fair game and what wasn't. We went through that whole process, and we're going to do the same thing today with Star Trek Voyager with Season 8. So kind of pick up where Endgame left off, and kind of think about where we would take the show if it was going to keep going and we were in charge.
Yes, and our inspiration for this, again, maybe I'll talk about that real quick, is kind of what they did with Deep Space Nine a little bit with the documentary. Yeah. Just it's cool. It's just we're just trying to put our writer's cap on and put ourselves in kind of the realm of, like, we get contracted or we get hired to talk about Season 8, maybe write a few episodes or points that we would like to see. Bill and I have not delved into the literary side of this. I know there's some great books about kind of what happens once Voyager gets back. We will not be referencing those very much just because we haven't read them, and I would encourage you to do so though. But it's if you have read them, it's definitely let us know some of the parallels that you might see in this. Yeah.
To be honest, if we did, if we had both had that in our head, I probably wouldn't want to do this. I think what's interesting to me about tackling this is the fact that I know so many of those stories are out there and people are very attached and love that continuation of Voyager's story through the novels. So I know that there's a lot of knowledge about where that goes out there, and we are not exposed to it really. I have some understanding, like I have some ideas from just kind of being aware of those novels of some things that may happen, but I have not read it, so I haven't read that story, so I don't have pre-programmed like, oh, it's this and this and this, and I wouldn't be approaching this from a position of, well, the books did this, so we have to do that, or we have to, like, there's no element of reacting to the literary exploration of Voyager's continuation.
Yeah.
You know, with what we're going to do today. Rob is here too. Good morning, Rob, or good afternoon for you.
Yeah.
Hope you're doing well.
Welcome, Rob. Should we jump into it?
Yeah, I think we should just jump right in.
How do you want to do this?
That's a good question. Yeah, I mean, I think it's tough. One of the challenges with Voyager, I think, if I'm being like, I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on this, like, backseat driving, revisionist, how I
don't want to do that.
On. But to be fair, like, I think the way that Voyager works best, with at least the way that I would envision this to go, is if they would have found a way for Voyager to come home, maybe with a little bit of time left at the end of Season 7. And the reason I say that is because I think, at least for me, the thing that I see as the most feasible and logical is for the crew to not be just repackaged on the Voyager and going on adventures as a unit in the Alpha Quadrant after coming home. I think the much more realistic outcome would be for them to be sort of broken up and sent in different directions. And I think that creates a challenge with like a season 8. Like if we were going to keep going with season 8, is this a show that has now like multiple storylines kind of paralleling each other? Like these characters are not connected anymore potentially, or at least some of them are not. And I think if there was a way for, instead of this being a season 8, which we're not doing, if say Voyager comes home in episode 18 of season 7, and you have it from 18 to 26 to explore the homecoming and what happens to everybody, at least the way that I would want to tell this story, I think that's probably the path that makes the most sense, to put those things into motion and see those.
Yeah.
But we're gonna do this as episode 1 of season 8 and see where, just go with it and see what we would want to do, I guess. I guess the way that maybe makes the most sense to start talking about this is, kind of like we did with the Enterprise season 5 episode 1. Like what kind of arcs do we have in mind? Like what do we broad stroke for like a season 8? Where do we want these characters to sort of end up? And I think maybe the entry point into this conversation is like, okay, at the end of Endgame, they're home. They're pulling up to Earth, getting ready to park. Where do we want to see these characters end up? Like, do you have sort of broad stroke outcomes for any of these characters specifically in mind?
Specifically in mind, there's I've thought about a few of the characters, and I'm probably just gonna list them off, and then we can kind of go from there. At least what I'd like to see is Tom and B'Elanna probably settle down. I would like to see, and this is kind of a maybe overarching theme, but I think Seven should get taken by Starfleet Intelligence with the Borg threat. I think that something like that could easily get, she could get interrogated and poked and prodded a lot, and things like that. I think it would be fitting for Harry to stay on the ship. He worked so hard throughout the 7 seasons to try to get home, and now once he's home, he wants to stay on the ship. I think that would be kind of clever. Yeah. And then maybe my last thing is have them just explore this like post-traumatic stress type of avenue where this crew has gone through a lot with each other, and it's tough to. Change is tough because they've been, and it could just dive into maybe the effects of deep space exploration. I think to this point we don't really see a 7-year mission like this. I know it's 5-year mission is usually referenced, but as a 7-year deep space mission kind of out of contact can take a toll on a lot of these crew members. I think there would be some fun exit interviews, and then obviously what to do with the some of the Maquis crewmen that are still on the ship. What do we do with them? But yeah, those are the types of things that I'd like to see with the characters, but also storylines explore as well. Sorry, I don't want to hog all this time at the beginning. But yeah,
I think you hit on the dramatic theme that I would be the most excited to sort of play with. Is I think it'd be really interesting to look at these characters through the lens of like, they spent these 7 years desperate to get home. Every move they made, every decision, every little mission along the way had a sort of end game outcome of we got to get home. It's not a traditional Star Trek mission of pushing out and exploring. They're working their way back, and everything's kind of driven by that. And so they have this burning desire for 7 years to get home. But through that experience, they built this family. They built these connections. They have this little insular experience with each other, and they bonded and connected. And now that they're home, the push and pull of we did it. We're home. We're all going to break up now and go our separate ways. The sort of conflict of we achieved our mission, but we there's I would imagine there would be like real ambiguity or a real struggle with being broken up and having that like separation anxiety and like you said like these PTSD kind of uh,
Yeah.
conditions that these crewmen are going to have to overcome. I think I would like to play with the anxiety and the struggle with being taken apart.
Yeah, and I think we could definitely do that. There's also some interesting things we could do with. I think they would have to deal with some type of fame as well. I think this is I'm guessing a very well-known crew and a very well-known story. So I think everybody's going to be so happy that they're back. But it's not every crewman made it back. Not every. I mean, at what cost did they make it back?
Right.
So I think that would be kind of fun to explore. As well, but definitely that separation anxiety. That's why I feel like maybe they do some definitely go branch out, and I don't want to say that they all stay together like you said at the top of the show, but I do think there's some that would want to stick together, especially let's say at least like temporarily. I'm not saying we're not going to have another one, a repackaged show where they're going to go on adventures to each other, but I think some hesitation going kind of assimilating back into kind of what it means to be like just an everyday civilian. If they choose to, maybe that's something we could talk about too. If they choose to stay in Starfleet, or they say that, hey, I did my service, I'm gonna go somewhere else and do something else. But yeah, it's a lot to explore.
To go kind of character, if we want to talk about each character and what their kind of immediate mindset would be upon returning home and what do they want to do, where they want to go. I think you nailed it with Harry Kim. I think he's the exact perfect character to be the one who has a strong desire and maybe voices a want to for let's stick together, like let's keep this going.
Yeah.
And I think he would be the one who'd be trying to kind of rally the troops and be looking for a way for as many of them to stick together as possible and to kind of keep the family together. He feels the one who would be most situated to make that case. And I think the dramatic yin and yang of he's the one who's the most eager to get home. He's the one who's also the most eager to keep the status quo together. I think makes sense. I think it adds up for the way his character is presented through the 7 years. I think he, given his, place as a younger person and how he comes into the show, I think that would be a sensible place for that character to go.
Yeah. My in my head a rep from Utopia Planitia comes and has to inspect and do all these things, and it's just Harry on the ship, and he has to there's a great back and forth between those two characters, and I think that would be fun to explore as well, just having Harry still on the ship, because
feeling the most protective of it.
Yeah, because when you think about it, I mean, I'm sure Starfleet would want to do a bunch of tests and just check the actual health of the ship, because it's literally gone through the ringer and back. So,
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that all definitely makes sense for him. For Janeway, it's kind of swing to the opposite end of the spectrum. With, I think it would be interesting for her to, kind of like we see with Archer at the end of the Xindi thing, at the beginning of season 4. I would like to see her in a position where, after 7 years being the captain, living crisis to crisis, and like being forced to kind of sit quietly and wait for a Starfleet review of her personal logs and her and the mission logs, and to like wait for the debriefing. I think the best thing for her character would be to be forced into a whiplash situation of here you were just a few days ago on the bridge of Voyager, in that mental space of captain of the one ship out there trying to get home, being under that constant pressure and stress. And now you are being told to just kind of sit in the corner and wait while we pick apart your logs and see what you did right, see what you did wrong, before we, poke and prod you for the next week with, challenges and questions about your decisions and what you did. I think forcing her. Good.
No, you go ahead.
No, I just think that would be a different situation than we saw her in Night when she's kind of forced to sit and think. I think it would be another sort of step in that direction where, forcing her to kind of reckon with her choices and think about the people who didn't make it back. And, maybe, she has some conversations with people like Chakotay and like Tuvok and maybe a new character, maybe a Starfleet, admiral that she has personal connections with that are, coming to see her, coming to talk to her about her experiences and, have these conversations about, what the last 7 years meant and, the successes and failures while she's waiting to be debriefed. I think would be a neat way to explore where she is emotionally after coming home.
I think it would be fun to have a hearing set, a specific date, the Voyager hearings, and everyone's spread out. But I think it would be funny to have Chakotay as the guy who has to come and to each person and bring them in to the Voyager hearings because I don't know. We could do a different character. Maybe it's Tuvok. He comes and or it's a couple of people bringing the senior staff to this hearing where they have to. It's the start of the kind of deep dive into this looking back. But I really like that idea. I think there's some really good quiet moments that could definitely happen with kind of Night and what what Archer had to do on the rocks and kind of talk about that. I think there could be some really quiet, cool moments for sure.
Yeah, I think with Janeway, you have to the payoff there has to be her processing the good and the bad of the 7 years. I think that's got to be to me even the reason to do this, and I think one of the main reasons I want more at the end of Endgame. I wish there was more payoff to this. Is that feels like maybe the missing piece. Knowing the sort of hell that Janeway went through over those 7 years, and that's what I want to see. That would be the thing that would be the most creatively, invigorating for me going into something like this, is to explore that part of her character, because we know she's already doing it. We know it's already there because of that. That she already had, when she has these quiet moments and she's forced to sit and think, that these are the things that come to the surface for her, and she's struggling with it. And,
I also think it would be cool to see her get vulnerable for a little bit. I think she does a great job keeping that away from the crew and the senior staff. So I think having them see her in that state, I think, would be interesting as well.
Right.
But
agreed. Yeah. Agreed. And that's why I like the idea of having different characters maybe come to see her, talk to her, see how she's doing, and then allow that to. And like Cyber Honey just mentioned, she's rattling off all kinds of good ideas, but she presents the one thing that I kind of would struggle with this, and this is like the weird thing about this idea is now you have all this future stuff that happened after Voyager ended kind of in mind that you might have to that force you to maybe run away from certain things. And she's talking about the debriefing scene that we get in Enterprise with Archer and Home, and that's kind of in 2021 parlance, or even back in 2005, 2006. Now at this point, that's something that we've kind of already seen, right? Through a different character. And to be honest, I'm more interested in seeing Janeway's process and seeing her conversations with people that are not debriefing her than I am the actual debriefing.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. I want to see her processing it more than I care about an interview with a
An
panel of
admiral,
admirals
yeah.
about, you did this in
Yeah.
Scorpion, and then you did this in, rattle off the episodes and, pick apart these decisions. Like, I'm not as interested in actually seeing that play out. I just want to see Janeway come to terms with her own comfort zone about what she did and how she did it, and what the whole experience meant.
You think, let's say that this hearing's been postponed a couple times, and this is like going to be the final time, and each time Janeway hasn't showed up, and we got like out of this, every crew member has to go, not everyone, but the senior staff has to go and visit her and try to get her to come back. I think it'd be fun too.
Yeah, something like that. Find some device to suck all the dramatic, opportunities out of Janeway's reckoning with the 7 years would be a good way to go. Yep.
Yeah, she's done like 0 interviews, 0 press, anything like that. She's been like a recluse, and that's kind of like Night as well. So it's hard.
Yeah,
it's really hard to try to find that balance.
It's because there's both opportunity and pitfall there. I think you don't want to completely repeat like what you've already seen, but because you've seen it and because it's not completely resolved, it is a credible path forward for the character. Like, that's in her, and that's a struggle that she's dealing with, and that's there. That's going to be something she's going to have to go through and process. So you kind of have to go down that lane, but you got to find a different way to do it without just repeating the beats and the notes that Knight gave us.
Yeah.
What about there's so many hanging, like you said, the one thing about Endgame is that it does leave a lot of these characters with such obvious, like, well, what do they do? Like, you have obviously Tom and B'Elanna with Baby. That's such a, like, the whole new life getting ready to start, and the Doctor and Seven are both such anomalous characters with kind of wide open.
I think they're still on the ship with Harry. I think again it's been their home. Again, we could do similar things with the Doctor. He's always wanted that freedom. I think maybe he did do some sightseeing at some places, but at the end of the day, he's still in his sick bay, kind of doing his experiments.
The grass is always greener.
Yeah. And then with Seven, I think at least right now, I know she kind of opens up a little bit. I think Voyager is still kind of the home that's the only home she really has. So I think she would still be there as well. But that's just me. That's just my thoughts on that.
I definitely like the idea of having many of these characters, maybe not all of them, but people like you just mentioned. I think Tom and B'Elanna, I could see. The Doctor, Harry. After a few days, having opportunities to sort of get off the ship, go live someplace else, feeling compelled to kind of go back to their quarters on Voyager. Like, that's where they're pulled back to go home.
Yeah.
Like, that's still that's still what feels, like home. And I think there are characters on the show who would feel the most connected that way. Even Janeway. I could see Janeway going through this process and, being on her quarters and on Voyager. She's so connected to that ship, and that feels like her safe space. So that would be an interesting. I do think other characters, like, when I think of Chakotay, I don't think of him as somebody that would feel like, oh, I got to stay on the ship. I feel like he could.
No. Yeah, he could
kind of cut it and go and do something else, and not feel like. I feel like he would.
He's building a log cabin somewhere, maybe.
Yeah. I feel like he mentions in Future's End Part 2, when they're thinking they might get home with time travel shenanigans and all that stuff, that he would probably. I think it's that episode that he talks about maybe wanting to teach at the academy, and tap back into like the anthropology profession.
Let's have him do that. That's a lot better than just. Yeah, because I think one thing, as much as I'd like to have everyone just go be like secluded, and that's not really what I don't think they would do. I think they would want to have that interaction with people. I know maybe some of those characters would want to just go be like somewhere off and by themselves. But yeah, I think would also be some characters that would just do something that they've always wanted to do because they kind of lost that freedom that we kind of all have to be able to kind of do whatever we want to do or go for whatever we want to go for. So yeah, I think there would be an element of something like that.
And I think Chakotay is in a unique spot because he's a guy who's kind of lived multiple lives. He was a Starfleet officer who had some success. He moved up the ranks. He left to do the Maquis bit. Like he has a whole history with the Maquis, and now he's on Voyager. Like he's experienced like these chapters in life. He's moved on to do other things already in his experience. Unlike somebody like Harry Kim or the Doctor, even Seven of Nine has like the hard break from the Borg to living
on
as
Voyager.
Seven on the ship. But Chakotay and maybe like Tuvok, characters like that, would have the most comfort zone with being able to be like, okay, like this is over. Like we can stay connected, we can do these things, but it's okay to like branch off and do something else.
Yeah.
Like, to not have that lifeline on the ship that is harder to walk away from. So I think I see him
teaching at the academy.
I don't see him as somebody that is like eager to formally re-enlist and go be a first officer on some other ship someplace.
Indiana Jones.
I see him doing something more academic and more grounded. I think you see that I think that would feel right given his kind of openness to wanting to settle down, and even in the Delta Quadrant with Resolutions and with Scorpion and in Year of Hell, he poses like, why don't we just find a planet and
settle down?
He's more willing to just like, okay, let's just live.
Yeah.
And I think having arrived home, I think he would do it. So that feels right to me.
Yeah, that feels right at home for that character, which is tough because you want to do right by these characters, and it's tough to be able to feel like how do you do right by these characters and how does it feel like that's what Tuvok would do, that's what Harry would do,
Mm-hmm. I think that's the challenge with this concept. Like, how do we, if we're gonna like restart Voyager and have an 8th season, I think given where that show leaves off, unlike say The Next Generation, if we were going to do season 8 of The Next Generation after All Good Things, that show doesn't have this degree of like a hard right turn of the end of the like at the end of the 7th season. Like the end game leaves us at such a point where it's like it's a completely new world, and we have to think about like, well, what are these characters going to do? So it forces decisions to be made at the very outset to think about like broad stroke. What do they want? Where do they want to go? Like what are their desires? And I think from that point you can build. Like if we were going to do this every week, we could build, episodes and storylines. And continue on. But you have to know like where these characters' heads are. I think to do that, given the game changing new dynamic that they all find themselves in.
Yeah, because this is a new chapter for Voyager. Like so, like you mentioned TNG, it felt like at least the subsequent movies, this felt like an extension of the show. But this could almost be a whole new show, really.
Right. Exactly.
So that's how at least I feel. Just how it just the end of of Voyager feels more final.
Yes.
This feels different. So
the show as we know it, as 7 years of Star Trek Voyager's done. Like that's over. It is a new show. I mean, you could rebrand it and call it something new with the, you have the same characters, and you could have it be an extension of
Star Trek
what we saw for the 7 years. Yeah, pretty much. It could be exactly. Yeah. And it could easily be that, and because of how different the inherent ground rules of what we're dealing with.
It would be like Picard, though, kind of.
A whole different thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would, because you're dealing with aftermath. Characters are broken apart. You know, like
Yeah.
that would kind of have to be eventually, maybe not right away, like we're talking about here. You know, if you're going to jump right into it, you're going to pick up kind of right where Endgame left off. You have these, they're still together, and you're dealing with what are they going to do now? Which is why I think we're finding ourselves kind of needing to talk about, well, what are they going to do now? Because that's we got to start there. You have to figure out like what happens from there. But where we're kind of sending these characters is going to create the situation where they're all in different potentially places.
Yeah.
Doing very different things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Tuvok's obviously got a medical condition that he's got to deal with. Remember, in Endgame, he's starting to come down with like a Vulcan version of Alzheimer's or dementia, and that's becoming a more pronounced issue. And there's an urgency to get home sooner rather than later to, you know, help him combat those symptoms. And so that feels like something that would have to be dealt with right away.
As well, yes, for sure. Yeah, definitely first couple episodes. That's huge.
He's got to go to Vulcan
Yeah.
Get assessed and, you know, figure out what's what there. You know, is it something that's treatable and reversible? Is it something that has to be managed and is kind of past the point of no return, but can be slowed down? And, you know, or, you know, those are dramatic decisions that I think would have to be made to decide how that character is going to move forward and what kinds of opportunities are there for him. Because I don't, full disclosure, I don't think either one of us watched Endgame like yesterday or this week. So I'm trying to remember like exactly how that. I feel like that was part of the pressure, right? That was part of the pressure to get Voyager home for Janeway. She knows that this is kind of coming to a head for Tuvok, and it's something that eventually is going to get to a point where.
Yeah, because we have an alternate ending, right? The Doctor is Joe now. Like this, there's a bunch of different. So I don't know if we go that route. We try to do some. I don't know.
That's actually a really interesting thing. How much of that alternate future kind of comes true?
Yeah.
Or is being aimed at as like we're kind of heading these characters in that direction. But yeah, the alternate future is a future where they don't get home very quickly. There's still years of Delta Quadrant left at the end of season 7, and because of that extended time in the Delta Quadrant, Tuvok's condition gets to the point where it's not, you know, treatable anymore. Like he's in this alternate future, he is, you know, full on. He's dealing with dementia basically. He's kind of where Sarek was in Unification, or he's not totally coherent, and but that's a product of taking too long to get home. So I don't think that outcome is necessarily baked in as a definite. You have to get there.
Yeah.
I think there's an out left by getting home faster.
Yeah, there's definitely treatable. I'm not sure that you can definitely cure it, but it's not as extreme as we see in Endgame, right? Where he's like completely just like suffering from the full effects of it. I think at this point, maybe he just has to have like a treatment, instead of, because I don't know much really about it, and if you can't even cure it, so maybe it's just something that he has to deal with just moving forward but it's very, it's like it's a good thing because he's very, I don't know, appreciative because they did get home the way that they did. So and maybe that's where maybe that's where we find our exciting incident, is these Voyager hearings are the temporal police or whatever, the people who visit Cisco, because I mean technically she breaks some.
Yes.
There's
they changed history.
She's got to pay or Janeway has to pay the piper because she deals with Klingons, which is a kind of a Discovery tie a little bit with the time crystals, which I didn't think about just till now.
Yeah.
But yeah,
True.
I
think that's a great point.
I think I think it would be fun to have to do. That would be our kind of first episode, is those hearings.
Setting them up, at least that's going to be.
At least setting them up.
I think you're right, though, that would be the most fruitful, like, dramatic thing that's kind of hanging over them, and over her specifically, through a series of episodes. Like, if you're going to go a serialized route, that's something to do. Yeah. There's so many things that have to be reckoned with. like you said, they changed history to make this happen. And if those temporal agent guys are up Cisco's behind for trials and tribulations, you got to figure that they're going to have some serious questions.
Yes, her career is probably in the balance here.
Yeah, and I think that would present some really cool opportunities for the show to reflect on itself. And
but before that, I'd like to get the things like you were talking about, like have January's reflection of what she did and what happened over the 7 years before this. Like, I really do like the idea of that temporal, those temporal guys doing this trial or whatever debriefing thing. But I also would like to get, I guess, both of those things. So
yeah, and I think it's important for Janeway to be in a position to defend herself and defend the crew and defend the decisions that were made in a way that is compelling, and like she's going to have to go through a process to get there. Like, so that I feel like going through her own comfort zone with her own decisions is the mission critical piece that has to happen for her to be able to advocate for those decisions and to, stand firmly in front of those two temporal agents and to make a good case for why she did what she did. She's got to get comfortable, kind of like in Unification 3 with Burnham. Like, she's got to find her own truth before she can actually give the truth and defend and stand firmly, confidently in front of that kind of inquisition. You got to find it in yourself first, and I think Janeway would have to go through that process.
Yeah, for sure.
So I think that might be the connection. We have to get to that trial, that debriefing, whatever you want to call it, hearing, and we have to get her there through this sort of more insular self-trial that she's going through.
Yeah.
With her
self-reflection. Yeah, self-trial. That's a good point. For sure, because I like that idea. Yeah.
Who have we not talked about? Is there anybody that we've? Neelix is gone. He's back. We're
I don't think
what happened in 7. He's
yeah.
on his Talaxian colony, hanging out. We kind of talked about the Doctor and kind of wanting to maybe. I see him being somebody who wants to get out there and has these things he wants to do. He wants to go meet his hollow novel agent, and see the world and put himself out there. But I do think it makes dramatic sense for him to be always pulled back to Voyager at the end of.
And I think it would be interesting. Yeah, it would be interesting to have the scientific community push back against. Again, we get more kind of like the people in the scientific community aren't on board with having a hologram as part of it being able to contribute.
Yeah.
So maybe there's some pushback there as well, along with this hollow agent, obviously.
Yeah, no, I think that makes perfect sense too. I think that's such a clear path forward that not everybody in the Starfleet community is going to see. Like I can just imagine situations where they want to do like upgrades to his program and they want to modify this and modify that, and his immediate reaction is like, "What are you talking? I don't need that. Leave me be." Like, but having to have those kinds of struggles and like they're more predictable. I think like more pretty. You'd have to find ways to make them interesting and different and unexpected, but I think that's such a clear, obvious path forward for that character to have to deal with. That you'd have to do something with it. You have to reckon with this guy's a hologram. He's a one of a kind of a entity, and that there's curiosity surrounding him, and how he had to find his place.
Mm-hmm.
You know. Even his like mobile, like that's 29th century technology. The shields that they use to get home, like the ship is loaded.
They're gonna want to just take a look at everything because it's got board technology on it as well. So I think I think it gets impounded or parked or somewhere, and it just gets and Seven and Harry have to just fight off a bunch of these Starfleet engineers that want to poke and prod and experiment, take apart, and and they're trying to maintain their home. So I like that.
And
idea.
I agree with that. I think Seven and Harry would be the two. Like we kind of talked about at the beginning, with Harry being maybe the one tied to the ship and wanting to keep the crew together and keep it as familiar as possible. I see those two characters for maybe different reasons and different motivations being the ones that are like protective of the ship and the ones that are like button heads with Utopia Planitia techs who are coming on board to be like, how's this stuff working? What are you doing? Like, this isn't supposed to do this. And like I see B'Elanna being the chief engineer, maybe even having an easier time, kind of like kind of disconnecting. She's got a baby. She's she's got a lot on her plate. And, then Harry and Seven being the ones that are the advocates for the ship and the technology and all that stuff.
I also like one of the engineers. I'm looking at the shuttle inventory. You guys went through a lot of shuttles, but also there's this one Delta Flyer. What's that designation? And I think Tom and B'Elanna take it. That would be fun too.
That would be. Yeah. I think you said you kind of envision Tom and B'Elanna both kind of settling down. You don't see them.
I think
sticking in Starfleet.
Yeah, I don't see them sticking in Starfleet really. I see Tom being a flight instructor maybe somewhere, or just really settling down, because I think they have such new life. I feel like, and it's such they're such different characters than they were when they first came on, but I think they're for the better, and I think both they kind of both come from semi-broken homes, and I think it's just kind of poetic justice that they have created such a great home with their children and probably future children, but them together just creating something. I think there would be a quietly powerful moment with Admiral Paris and with Tom. I think would be fun.
Definitely. Maybe
just not even talking about duty or anything like that. Just showing their baby, and that's that. I think that would be cool too, to see something with Admiral Paris as well.
That's a definite huge hanging thread that I think would be a major thing to explore in those early episodes, is their kind of reconnection and coming to terms with everything that they've left behind, and restarting their relationship. I think that would present a lot of really good dramatic potential. And that connection, because he is an admiral, and so much of their, it seems like, strife and friction came from like Tom not knowing what he wanted to do and not being able to fit into Starfleet. Admiral Paris is he's a Starfleet guy. Like that reconnection and their building their relationship back up together, I think would really be a major roadmap for where Tom ends up. Does he stay in Starfleet? Does he not? Like those kinds of decisions, I think, would maybe be framed by how that reconnection goes with his dad.
I feel like he's a stay-at-home dad, though. Maybe.
I could see it. I mean, I could. He's one that I could kind of see going either way. That's a more open-ended question for me. I could see it. I could definitely see both sides of that discussion, and I could kind of see it with B'Elanna too. I think she's kind of. I think both of them have kind of grown into their roles and having that part of their identity that I could see them wanting to hang on to it, but I could also see them, because they've built this new thing and they are such different people, kind of being able to cut it off and move on and keep building what they've built together.
Yeah.
I think both of those paths are equally
true to the character,
dramatically feasible. Yeah, I think you could get there either way.
Yeah,
and have it feel real.
Yeah,
and I think the Doctor, I could see the Doctor bonding again, continuing to have a connection with Barclay. I think Barclay would gravitate to
Section 31. Oh no, sorry, I just read a comment that was Section 30.
Oh yeah, Section. That is something we'd have to deal with too, I think, because of the technology and.
Yeah, but real quick, back to Barclay though. I feel like he would be in the show for sure. Like he's definitely a pivotal part for sure. Definitely hit the connection to the Doctor. I think there's some good stuff of Barclay being super familiar with everybody, but them the opposite, not very familiar, which would be fun too. But yeah, that's Barclay. That's a great point. I did not think of that, but we definitely have to have him somehow connected.
And I love the sort of the consistency of him connecting with the Doctor and having Barclay's identity from the beginning of how he was introduced being tied to the holodeck and that whole thing. I think just makes sense for them to be sort of a team or a duo that moves forward together.
Yeah, I feel like maybe I want Barclay as the Voyager crew rep now, because he's such a
maybe
he has such a love and care for that crew. I feel like he would be able to handle that balance really well with just helping them kind of transition, because I think there's probably an element of a lot of this crew does feel like outsiders and trying to assimilate into the world, and that's kind of what Barclay was kind of struggling through with on the Enterprise and in Voyager as well. But I really like that idea of Barclay being involved in some form or fashion.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I think that's a great call to have him be tied into these hearings somehow, and maybe being the one that, is maybe the liaison from the crew to the folks who run the hearings somehow. He's sort of middle guy.
Yeah.
Really good question posed in the chat. And please, if you're watching this back, turn on the chat. Read the comments.
One of the best functions really YouTube has.
Yeah. Really great ideas for the characters, and that could be a whole show to kind of unpack her path forward for some of these Voyager characters. But really good question. What about Voyager itself? What happens to the ship? Is it?
It's I think Starfleet doesn't really retire ships that often, because I feel like I've seen like Reliant style, but in for a while. But those Miranda classes, they don't go away. It takes, I have to feel like centuries. But no, I think Voyager itself, to me, like, gets impounded, and I don't think it wouldn't become a museum. I think it's just gonna be studied. I think it'll stay at maybe Earth Space Dock, but I think at some point it's gonna get taken back to Utopia Planitia. But I think, I don't want it to be. I don't know what I want it to be. I think it does make sense that Starfleet would definitely. I think after a deep space mission like that, things do have to be refreshed. The gel packs, whatever you want to do, they need a vacation as well or something. I don't know. If we could do something funny with that too, and refurbishing the ship would be cool. But I think there's just so much technology and stuff wrapped up into it. I think it might be just it might become just parked somewhere and elements taken apart, and now it's actually not a full functioning ship, because there's Borg technology, there's Delta Quadrant technology, there's 29th century technology in there, so I don't know what happens to it.
I think you're right on. I think the idea to have it, there's talk in the chat about, or Cyber Honey, like eventually in Endgame it becomes a museum, and I think eventually it could get there. But I think in the immediate future, I don't think it's something that they do right away. They're not going to just frame it up as a tourist attraction right away. I think more likely in the immediate future would be it would go to Utopia Planitia. Tex would be studying the what out of it and trying to figure out how things were retrofitted and using all the technology that they've kind of gathered through the Borg and through their travels to the future stuff. Like there is so much like hybrid kind of technology going on in there. Just having the Borg stuff like in the cargo bay with Seven's,
because the Borg threat is still a thing, so we got to have something to kind of defend ourselves against it. So
right, there's opportunities to study, like you said, the effects of the long term mission without refit and the self refit that the crew gave it over the 7 years by necessity and through opportunities that came along.
Yeah,
I think those things would have to be studied, and that goes along. That's what would allow for things like stuff that I really like the Harry and Seven having to,
manage that,
walk around following the text and answer questions and advocate for the things that they did and didn't do. I think that all makes sense, and I think that's what would happen to the ship in the short term. And that keeps it close to home and allows for characters to, want to go back and, spend time and
move back in.
Basically, like have separation anxiety about their quarters.
I like that.
And
if something happens, I like that. I feel like Harry and Kim could, like, under the table, get you back on the ship and back into your quarters.
Yeah.
I like that
True.
idea. Just because I think, I think there would be elements of Starfleet handling this crew with kid gloves. I think there is some other stuff that they would have to be more like, hey, why did you do this? With the temporal stuff. I think you got to be really direct with that, because I don't know. I don't think that doesn't bode well, people doing that. So I don't think, but I think being able to be very lenient with the crew, and because they've definitely gone through a lot in these 7 years, so I think there should be some leeway. I think they should allow people to stay on the ship for as long.
Just
as
the
possible.
Maquis stuff, like
how do you handle that?
How do you it's years ago by this point. I guess it's not that many years, but the Maquis are no longer a thing because of Dominion. I don't. Did they just get pardoned because of
their service?
Their service.
I think that feels.
That's.
I think maybe that's one of Janeway's. She'll agree to come back if she'll get pardoned to her crew or something like that. So I don't know, something like that.
Yeah, I think that would have to be. Yeah, I agree with that. I think having that be a thing that she would advocate for. These people have suffered enough, and they've overcome and improved and done everything that Federation justice systems call for, like rehabilitation, and like they did it. Yeah. They became functioning members of a Starfleet crew. Some of them with no training at all. Some of them with no Starfleet background. They overcame and became critical components of the ship and getting home. So I feel like that would be a major thing that, like you said, maybe you build it into a piece of leverage that gets her to cooperate.
Well, I think we talked about it just before this. I think Voyager is one of her bargaining chips as well. I know it's not technically her ship; she's been issued it, but the technology on that and the so how much data and things that they've gathered from their 7 years, not just like obviously the Borg technology and all the technology they're going to get, but just the data and knowledge that they've gathered from that region of space that they can just study for ever. So yeah, I think Voyager, we talked about what's going to be Voyager's fate. I think it's going to be a bargaining chip, along with a few other things, but yeah.
Yeah, I agree with all this. I think it makes me bittersweet all over again. That there's not more at the end of Endgame. That
Yeah.
that Endgame is the end
Yeah.
for this crew together. Fortunately, I think we're starting to get a little bit more with some of these characters. We obviously got to see more of Seven through Picard. We're going to see a little bit more of sort of Janeway and Prodigy, and sounds like maybe even Chakotay in Prodigy somehow, some way. Some of the news out of STLV.
Nice.
So we're getting little bits, but I think it makes me really wish that they found a way. And I get it. Like, I think about this all the time whenever we talk about Endgame. Like,
it's about
the I get the dramatic the difficulty that the writers faced with like the decisions on when do we bring them home, what's the show about, the journey home, like the culminating big event at the end of the show always felt like getting home is like the climax, like that's the thing at the end of the thing. And so the what I'm asking for at the beginning of this, and what I've been talking about for a long time, is, you know, I feel like the thing that would have been the most satisfying is finding a way to bring them home, maybe with a few episodes left to explore some of these things. But I also get the challenge of selling that as a we're not bringing them home at the end, we're bringing them home in episode 18 or whatever. So it's a tough one. It's the premise didn't offer them many easy answers in terms of how to deliver on some of these things. Jimmy77 speaks the truth. I don't care what anybody says. I love Star Trek Voyager. Me too.
Yep, me too. Favorite show.
Yeah, I think we're having this conversation and having this many, being able to like dedicate the energy to imagine these different outcomes for the characters and all comes from a place of
love,
complete love. Yeah, like if you don't
appreciation,
love it, this is not an interesting thing to think about.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think that about does it. We're about at that 1 hour mark. We appreciate you guys stopping in chat and helping us work through some season 8 types of wants and hopes and dreams for season 8 of Voyager, a potential season 8. The discussion doesn't have to stop here. Discord and Twitter are probably the two best places to keep the discussion going. If you got more ideas for another topic like this, definitely let us know as well. This is going to be, I'm not saying this is going to be a every month type of deal, but it's fun to do this every couple months to every half year. So
it's a different flavor. Like, it's so easy to, so much of the Star Trek conversation tends to be reflecting on things that they did and looking at episodes and characters and storylines and all the stuff that's on screen and done. It's really fun to occasionally, I think, put on a creative cap and like think forward and think about, you know, the creative aspect of it. And it's not something that I've done a ton of in my life, but it's always rewarding to do it. It's fun.
Yeah.
Way to think.
Anytime we can look at Voyager or any series in a different light, I think that's a success. So, yeah. We will be back next week for another Trek Lab episode. Definitely keep your eyes peeled for Core Setting as well. Bill and I talk about the new episode of the week, which is currently right now Lower Decks. But with that being said, thanks everybody for watching in chat and then watching after the fact as well. We'll see you guys next week.
Thanks, everybody.